streaming now. Had a bit of a technical issue a few minutes ago. Uh, my name, oops. All right, we are streaming because I got the notification on my phone. That is awesome. My name is Frank Lavinia, and I am a AI engineer, machine learning engineer, data scientist, whatever the hot title of the week is. But basically, I help customers and I help folks do more with data and build down intelligent systems. Recently, I have gotten the quantum bug. I'm not talking about some newfangled virus that's going on. I kind of have tweeted about this, blogged about this a lot since November. In November, I attended an internal conference for Microsoft employees that talked about quantum computers and kind of how the future may not be that far away. Without giving away too much secret information, there's been a lot of interesting innovations in this space. And I really think that this is the next wave, because we are really pushing our existing compute infrastructure and to the limit. We are at the risk of getting to another AI winter. And I think that the thing that could heat up or avoid another AI winter is the power that quantum computing can bring to bear. Now, for a lot of folks, particularly folks that have grown up, actually everyone who's used computers, we're used to the finite binary nature of programming, of code, right? It's true, false, it's one, it's zero. So we have to step back, remark, and I'd be remiss if I didn't comment on this. We have to sit back and marvel at the fact that this stream here, everything you've done on a computer or your phone, all really comes down to ones and zeros, right? If you combine enough of them, you can have a live stream like this. You can argue with strangers on Twitter and Facebook about politics. You could do anything given enough of these ones and zeros. Now, quantum computers offer another alternative where there is a one state and a zero state, but there's this notion of a superposition. And what superposition means, it's neither one or it's zero. It's actually both at the same time. Now, for most of us, that's really hard to envision. And I actually did a complete with a whiteboard over there discussing kind of like how that's possible. And if there's interest in the chat, I definitely will do it. So speaking of the chat, I do try to answer the questions in real time if you're watching this live. And thank you for watching this live. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. And if you're not watching this live, I appreciate you taking time whenever. So with that, here's the promise of the title. Right here, I have an 8-ball. And let me move some browser windows around so I have something to show here. All right, let's get back to restream. All right, so I have a magic 8-ball. And it turns out, if you're not familiar with this is something that I never had as a kid, oddly enough. I think this is more of a I don't know. It's kind of a gimmick. Ultimately, and it has a Wikipedia article about it, which of course it does because everything does. Let me share my screen. I'll show the article. So I learned something new today. I always assumed that the Magic 8-Ball was just a four-sided kind of pyramid, but I found out today that it is actually a is it dodecahedron? Let's see. Yep, ISO. You get to see me pronounce this, isocahedron. So it has 20 faces, and here are all the options here. So if you're not familiar with what a magic 8 ball is the idea that you can ask this a question and you flip it and it'll give you an answer. So keep in mind that it is a dodecahedron that's in there. Let me pull out the screen. Not that. In case you're wondering, hey, it seems like you're just improvising this. You would be right. All right. So I will do this for the camera. Hopefully the angle will work out. So you ask it a question. It's like, well, hey, should I have not worn a safety orange t-shirt before going on a live stream? Let's see. And you can't see, but basically there is a words engraved in there. And as it goes up, my response is, my sources say no, I should not have worn that. So the idea is that you ask it a question and it does that. So getting back to the shape that you saw, so you only saw one part of it. And let's see if I can do this here. I can arrange it. Oh, that is perfect. For once, the bug lined up perfectly. So the idea here is that you have, whoops. So what you see exposed is a triangle. Your sources say no. Hey, Thomas, how's it going? Your sources say no. Yes, apparently you are in sync with my magic 8-ball. So ultimately, this shape, when it's right side up, is just floating in here. It's no particular state. It's when I flip it upside down and one side floats to the top, does it go from one of the 20 options to this here. Now, that's a bit like a qubit. That's a bit like a qubit. So a qubit, I mean, if it's sitting here, I don't know what state it's in. It's really doesn't matter. It's floating, right? It could be moving. It could be solid. Alberto says, I always have a good story to tell. I guess I do. I guess I'm just a born storyteller. Hope you're having a great day, Alberto. That's good. So Thomas, you actually guessed it. Yes, and you should have bought a lottery ticket, because here's the interesting thing. It's a 20-sided die inside here. So the odds of you and it getting it right at the first time or in any time is 1 over 20 squared, which if I'm doing my math correctly in my head is kind of a big number. So maybe you should get that lottery ticket. But the idea here is that a qubit will kind of exist in neither one. They call it superposition, but it's not really either or the other, right? It hasn't really collapsed yet. So what I'm doing, using this analogy, and keep in mind this is an analogy. Yes, I hope to. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell me your username, but I'll have to check that. And I don't have a co-host this time to kind of distract from the fact that I'd be looking at my phone. But yes, you're right. I saw this. We actually got this at a garage sale. It was like $1. And I was like, I never had one of these. I always wanted one of these. And I saw it on my desk, and I was just talking to somebody about sharing my thoughts on quantum computing and whatnot. And I looked at this and I was like, so then I actually looked at the Wikipedia. Oh, it's Rupesh. Hey, Rupesh, how's it going? For some reason, you didn't carry over your name. So thanks for that. Big props to Rupesh and Alberto, because they have an awesome podcast. So basically, it exists in none of these states until I flip it over. And then when it does, it collapses, right? That's the ultimate thing. So the laws of quantum physics or the quantum mechanics do not work the way we expect the world to work. In fact, I actually have a slide deck on this. So if you don't have access to Magic 8 Ball, there actually is a Magic 8 Ball app. So that is a good point. But I like showing this because It's physical, it's real, it's tangible. But ultimately, I flip it over, it picks one of the options. Now, if you go to the Wikipedia page, and I'll go back there, turns out that there are multiple possibilities here. And in case the camera angle didn't work, this is what it actually looks like. So turns out that half of them are positive, and a quarter of them are negative, and a quarter of them are non-committal, right? So, reply hazy, try again, that sort of thing. So it is actually not a strictly binary thing. And it's interesting is that what's interesting is how this works. I don't know, it just fascinated me. And an example of entanglement. So as I was saying, quantum mechanics works very differently than what we're used to, right? I throw a ball, I throw a baseball, I drop this on the floor. I kind of know how that's going to work. And that's described by the laws of classical mechanics. It's Newtonian type stuff. Isaac Newton figured out. Turns out that if you go beyond, that describes things pretty much at the molecules and up, kind of. But basically, if you can see it, you can taste it, you can touch it, quantum physics, classical mechanics applies to you, or applies, right? So that's why this is very difficult for us to get our heads around, because our brains, our entire life experience is around classical mechanics. Classical mechanics will describe how a baseball flies and how moons stay in orbit, right? I mean, it's just kind of everything. Now, quantum mechanics describe kind of what happens at the molecular and submolecular level. And keep in mind, it wasn't that long ago we thought an atom was pretty much as small as things could get. So a lot of the things that we see don't make sense. And who knows? Not an expert in quantum physics, or particle physics, but the whole notion here is that we can take advantage of it. We don't have to fully understand it to take advantage of it and use all of this. So I will get to that. Because I think there's and precise is probably not the right word, because quantum computers aren't going to solve things in precision per se. They are going to be more probabilistic than deterministic. And that's my $10 word of the day. And bumping up the isohedron number up to the $20 word. But ultimately, it can do things that to us seem impossible. So, for instance, just by chance, Thomas had said basically the same result that this had given. Maybe, Thomas, your brain and this thing here is in a state of quantum entanglement, which basically means that if I do something here, even if it happens on the other edge of the universe, the other side of the universe, it will also react in a similar way. I think it's opposite is what it is, but if you're just expecting, you can kind of harness that. That's quantum entanglement. Or as Einstein put it, spooky action at a distance. And keep in mind, this is stuff that gave Einstein headaches. Like, this is just not something that is easy to do. And I thumbed through a book at the bookstore before the viral apocalypse called A Gentle Introduction to Quantum Physics. And I wasn't that gentle. Or I'm dense, or some combination of the two. But I'll leave that for you to decide. But that's just something I saw on my desk, and I'm like, how do I explain this? And here it is, the magic 8-ball. And that's something my wife would say. That's hilarious. Thomas said that you're dense, or like me, or that your brain is quantum entangled. I suspect it's the quantum entanglement thing, but that's really the key. And so the question I had is, how can you use this for precise computation? So it turns out, let me get my pen and my whiteboard app, and hopefully I can start sharing screen without any problems. All right. Where's my whiteboard app? Entangled. Good. Quantum entanglement. All right. So let me get this out. Okay. So here's an example from when I was a kid. I'm going to do another full-on talk about this. When I was a kid, there was a magazine called Omni Magazine, and it was kind of like a science fiction talk, and not talk. It was a magazine, and it had a really cool font. That's one of the things I remembered. And oops, it would draw it like this. Had a really cool font. But it was basically science articles and science fiction. Keep in mind, this was the 80s, before there was a sci-fi channel, before sci-fi existed. It was really hard to get access to good sci-fi on a regular basis. So the idea here is they would have a lot of science stuff. It wasn't really meant for a 12-year-old or an 11-year-old to read it, but here we are. But they had a lot of stuff here. William Gibson wrote for it. A lot of good stuff, a lot of good articles. I credit it with my interest in science as a kid, or maintaining my interest in science. I think a lot of kids have interest in this thing, but they kind of get turned away by a number of reasons. But anyway, they had a lot of puzzles in there. They were known for their lot of things, but one of them was their puzzles. So one of the puzzles they had was an ad for, it was actually Jim Beam. I think it was liquor, right? So they posted this whole message, and it was basically a bunch of numbers, right? And you were going to use your phone. This is back when phones had cords and wires, but the phone has each one has a letter to it, right? So 2, for instance, is I don't know, 3 is DEF. And yes, great pictures. The photography and the artwork in there was freaking awesome. Thank you, George, for the comment. The photography, they had H.R. Geiger in there. I mean, it was really ahead of its time. It kind of is back now, but it's not. Some things can't get back. I think 4 was GHI, right? That sort of thing. Your cell phone has this now. All right, so they had this whole long message, and because I can't do this from memory, I actually demoed this the other day, was they said, oh, well, it'll take you but so long to do this. Yes, Galaxy, yeah, I'll talk about that because that was pretty cool. So they had this thing, and it was like a whole long message. Ultimately, I felt like if you watch The Christmas Story, where Ralphie gets the secret decoder ring and ends up being an ad for Ovaltine, this ended up being an ad for Jim Beam. I forget exactly what the text was, but basically it had this whole long sequence of numbers, and it made this whole big deal about how this is going to take you a while, and but fortunately the predictability of English. So I suspect whoever wrote this didn't think of what I accidentally discovered. So I figured out if I just wrote this out like this, B, C, and this is T, U, V, and that is not that. That is a, see me struggle with a ABC. That's TUV, sharpen that, and this is also A, B, and C, right? So fortunately, we can kind of see right away what the answer is. So what I discovered accidentally by solving this was that depending on how the problem is laid out, the way the instructions to solve it was you would iteratively go through and write out each letter and each possible combination, which for this case would be what, 26 to the power of 4. I think that's what it would have been. So when I wrote out all the number of letters, I did not expect this, but the answer pops out at you. Maybe not as easy as data, but you get the idea that, hey, I solved this really quick. And this, I credit with my fascination with data visualization, because data visualization can make insights kind of jump out from the page, as you will. So I was pretty high on myself because, here it was. After these long, lengthy instructions about how hard this was, I solved it in, I don't know, 2 minutes, however long it took me to write out all the numbers and letters. So this is a bit like quantum computers, because I'm not approaching the problem one character at a time or one character combination at a time. In this matrix of 4 by 3, I am presenting all the possible states at once. And that's a good analogy for how quantum computers solve complex problems. So hopefully that helps. All right, modern day tech, awesome, man. I never got into Doctor Who up until, honestly, till the reboot in mid 2000s. But I like watching the old stuff now. It was never predictably on PBS when I was a kid, or maybe it was. I never got into it. My sci-fi fix as a kid was Star Trek reruns and Battlestar Galactica, the original, as well as some of the cheesy kind of 80s stuff like Automan, which was basically about this computer program that came to life and stuff like that. And plus all the movies that were on HBO that were kind of like, semi big budget stuff. But hopefully that clears it up. So I want to do a full on presentation like I did at the Azure Data Fest or Azure AI Fest, where I actually have slide decks and all. Not quite ready to do that right now, but this is kind of the demo from that. And let's see if I can see. Do I have it in my history here in PowerPoint? All right, well, that's not cooperating. So anyway, I just want to thank you for watching this live. But yeah, so we talked about galaxy pictures. Oh, George Lopez, you remember Automan, right? There's a YouTube video where they consolidate like all like the intros to all these shows. So there was Manimal, there was Automan, I think there was Riptide, which I don't remember it being a technology show. I remember they had a robot, but that was the one guy built. So check that out on YouTube. Also, big shout out to Modern Day Tech, who is another Marylander who has a really cool YouTube channel called Modern Day Tech. But yeah, man, Automan was something else. But so with that in mind, let's talk about the pictures that Omni Magazine had. Omni Magazine would hire these artists that would, I don't know, they would just paint these galaxy space galaxies. They would paint, like H.R. Geiger had a couple of illustrations in there. So if you don't know who H.R. Geiger is, you've probably seen his work because he was the inspiration, or he's somehow related to Aliens, the Alien movies, where the xenomorph and stuff like that. And he would paint kind of really strange stuff like that. And there was a lot of, for me, it was awesome because it was an interesting exposure, not just to kind of science, but science that was cool and fun, and even a little bit out there. Omni Magazine, Omni Magazine had an interesting history. Turns out it was actually published by the same guy who published Penthouse Magazine, and there's a really interesting Wikipedia article about kind of how that came about. And I didn't know half of this as a kid. I just, it was an interesting magazine. It made science fun. It kind of had a bit of sci-fi, kind of, sometimes had out there science type stuff, kind of parapsychology stuff. But it was an interesting magazine because they did do it from a pretty good journalistic point of view. But I love that. I credit that. That was an awesome thing. So this was pre-Hubble. Like Hubble was supposed to go up. In 86 or 87, and I don't think it ended up going up till 92 because of the Challenger disaster. So I mean, the artwork in this thing was awesome. I'm actually thinking about hitting up eBay, seeing if they have some old issues, because I mean, it's just, even the cover art, if you look it up, was pretty awesome. Like it was it was just unique. In fact, you actually saw it in Ghostbusters. They had a cameo in Ghostbusters. So let me pull up another browser window. I'll show you what I mean. But I'm not sharing the screen yet because Omni Magazine. Go. pull up the images from this. All right, let me share my screen. Oh, I can just turn the spotlight back on. Who knew? But these magazine covers were pretty interesting too. I remember as a kid, I would rip the cover off and like hang them on my wall, which, you know, wasn't thinking about collectability. But like if you take a look here, I mean, this screams 80s. But you kind of see that this is before cyberpunk was kind of a household world or a video game. But the one I remember, because I remember getting really nostalgic, was this one. Yeah, let's do it side by side to get a better view. I remember seeing this one. But I mean, it was just the artwork was just amazing. Like this one, I remember. I mean, that's just cool. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a total geek. Actually, there's no doubt about that. I totally am a total geek. Yeah, Frank Herbert had a lot of stuff in here. Yeah, you were right, George. These were totally ahead of their time. And Thomas, I don't know who Doc Savage is, but I do see that link, and I definitely will click on that. Thank you. Oh, that's H.R. Geiger. Got it. I'll have to do a search engine search with Bing, of course. But it just had stuff that was just it looked like it was computer generated or early computer generated. They had that very kind of glossy look, but it wasn't. I mean, the art of this was just, this one I remember. I mean, this was just so far ahead of its time. This definitely reminds me of early computer graphics. I mean, it just screams 80s, but like I don't know, it just had a very unique design aesthetic about it that you didn't really see anywhere else, or kind of ever since. I would say, yeah, interspecies communication. That's true, George. Good comment. Yes, now it's fashionable, but it's just cool. Just the graphics they have. That, before you could do a search on Pixabay or whatever, you would do that. But I swear I saw a coffee table book on like the art book. Yeah, Father's Day's already passed, but I swear I saw it. But like, here's an example. I mean, this is just so 80s. I mean, like you got the beach, the kind of the Miami Vice vibe. I mean, it was just cool. Like, it just had a lot of cool stuff in that. Hey, Jeffrey, how's it going? But I know this is a bit of a sidetrack from Magic 8 Ball. So if you're just joining, I basically explain how a qubit exists as both 0 and 1 at the same time, a bit like an 8 ball. And Magic 8 Ball, which basically has a 20-sided piece of die in here, which die is the singular of dice. Who knew? And you flip it over, one of those states becomes true. So it's a bit like quantum computer, because when it's not observed, it's kind of sitting normally. It could be any one of those, and then when you actually observe it, it collapses. But really appreciate it, you taking the time to spend with me here and reminisce about Omni Magazine. Did not expect to go there. Yeah, this is an example of artwork. And it's funny because there used to be a guy, actually, there's a lot of people that do this, where they basically take spray paint and like just common household items and build skyscapes with that. Oh, cool. Thomas found the link to the coffee table book. I will definitely check that out. It was definitely, thank you for finding that. Yeah, this was definitely ahead of its time. It was, I remember this one was talking about how to interpret your dreams and how to do lucid dreaming. They had a whole thing about that, a little workbook. I mean, it was just stuff that, like, before there was kind of YouTube and stuff like that. And, we only had like, 4 TV stations, actually 5. And then I grew up in New York City. So, we had ABC, CBS, NBC, Channel 5, which was kind of like Fox, and then we had PBS. Actually, no, we had 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, which is WWR, and Channel 11, and Channel 13. Okay, so 7 channels. But that was New York City, media capital of the world. So I try to explain to my kids some of these things, and they just don't get it because, I mean, they don't even watch TV. They just watch YouTube. Um, but um, but yeah, so before you had all these options and stuff like that, and you know, it was just really cool. They had a lot of stuff on UFOs. I mean, look at this. I mean, this screams 80s. I mean, yeah, this was really cool. And this was that was very avant-garde. Bit Geiger-esque. I don't know who made it. It's Will Cornier. Hmm. Yeah, the covers were just awesome. I should totally hit up eBay and stuff like that. Yeah, look at this. This was a common thing. And keep in mind, this was really before um, there was Photoshop and stuff like that in any meaningful way. Like this was all lovingly hand drawn, or most of it, or done some kind of comic book. That's interesting. Interesting. All right, clearly I know what I'm doing. I'm doing this weekend is searching around for this. Yeah, Arthur C. Clarke. That was my first exposure to Arthur C. Clarke's work. Was through Omni Magazine. A couple of short stories. Sci-fi was not a thing in my neighborhood. Let's put it that way. There you go. Wow. Oh, so nostalgic. Yes. Channel 13, PBS. It's where I used to watch Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers and stuff like that. Yeah. And yeah, man, that was cool. Wow. Okay, so we went from quantum computers to reminiscing about Omni Magazine and life in 1980s New York. But definitely check it out. Do searches. It's just fascinating the authors that publish there that end up going on to great things. And so thanks for joining me live. As always, I do try to answer the questions. If I can't do it live, I tend to do it in the comments. And with that, I wish you a happy, it's Friday. Have a great weekend. And maybe, just maybe, I'll do a stream or two over the weekend. I don't know. But definitely want to do the quantum talk when I'm fully prepared to deliver that again. But I have got to get ready for a big presentation I'm giving on Monday. Quantum to Mr. Rogers. Sounds like a Friday edition. Yes, I want to print that on a t-shirt. Thank you, Thomas. That's brilliant. I should go back and rename this. Rename the name of the post. All right, you all have a great evening. And thanks to everyone who's watching live and in the future. Thank you, George. Thank you. You have a great weekend.